Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating paradox right at the heart of modern learning, and we'll be grounding this in the cognitive neuroscience research of Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath. For decades now, we've been promised that if we just put more screens and digital tools into students' hands, we'd absolutely revolutionize education. But what if the exact technology that's supposed to make us smarter is actually doing the total opposite? In This Explainer, we're going to uncover the real cognitive consequences of our screen-saturated world, and more importantly, how we can fix it. And we're not just talking about middle schoolers here, but all the way up to the incredibly high-stakes environment of medical training. Okay, let's kick things off with a pretty jarring number, 66. So according to international PISA assessments, students who are using computers for more than 6 hours a day actually score 66 points lower than non-users. Just to put that into perspective, that represents a massive drop. It's basically the equivalent of plummeting from the 50th down to the 24th percentile, or dropping roughly 2 full letter grades in your academic performance. It's literally a stunning piece of data that forces us to rethink, well, the whole shebang. Section 1, the Digital Delusion. Look, we were all promised an educational technology utopia, right? Laptops, tablets, apps, they were supposed to free students from boring rote instruction. But instead, Dr. Horvath's research reveals we're actually in the middle of an unprecedented experiment in cognitive attrition. Tech has morphed from a helpful supplemental tool into this dominant, wildly distracting force. For over a century, psychologists watched general IQ scores just steadily rise by about 6 points per generation. But since the massive rollout of one-to-one devices in schools in the early 2010s, that trend has startlingly reversed. Literally, for the first time in a century, basic cognitive skills like working memory and attention are actively declining in younger generations. Section 2, brains, screens, and distraction. So why exactly is this cognitive decline happening? Well, we need to look under the hood at the biological bottlenecks of human learning. You see, it's not that technology is inherently evil, not at all. It's just that digital environments are fundamentally mismatched with how our brains actually form deep memories. Take the totally dangerous illusion of multitasking. The human brain simply cannot multitask. The lateral prefrontal cortex can hold only one rule set at a time. So when we're bouncing between apps and tabs, we aren't multitasking. Actually, scratch that. It's more like rapid task switching. And every single switch incurs a real biological cost, knocking down our accuracy and actively weakening memory formation. Real, true learning requires what Dr. Horvath calls cognitive friction. It's this productive, deep struggle, like a workout for your brain. The problem is, digital screens are engineered to be entirely frictionless. They're built for rapid-fire consumption and capturing your attention, ultimately serving profit rather than pedagogy. When you completely bypass that necessary friction, you get what researchers call the fluency illusion. Basically, students naturally prefer what feels easy to click through, but they mistakenly confuse that ease of processing with actual, deep understanding. Now, here's where things escalate. If an over-reliance on frictionless iPads is demonstrably harming the cognitive development of middle schoolers, we have to ask a really critical question. What happens when we hand artificial intelligence to a first-year medical student? Section 3, the medical education crisis. Think about it like this. If a 5th grader forgets a historical fact because they just relied too heavily on Google, well, that's unfortunate. But if a medical resident fails to develop independent clinical reasoning because an AI agent did the thinking for them, the consequences could literally be a matter of life or death. Medicine is transitioning incredibly fast right now. Back in the 1970s, the big challenge was just validating the available information. Then in the 2010s, it shifted to managing massive scales of data. But today, in the AI age, the absolute core competency of a physician is fundamentally shifting toward managing the interface between medicine and machines. The modern doctor has to know exactly when to trust an algorithm and, more importantly, when to override it. Section 4, the threat of deskilling. If we repeat those exact same frictionless mistakes of K-12 edtech in our graduate programs, we're facing a terrifying new problem in our hospitals and clinics. We risk producing highly efficient professionals who are completely dependent on the tools they are supposed to be managing. An over-reliance on generative AI, these powerful new thinking technologies, could severely stunt cognitive development. We've already seen this happen in other industries, like customer service and software development. But in healthcare, cognitive deskilling creates doctors who are incapable of independent clinical reasoning. Software developers might live by the mantra, move fast and break things, but clinicians have to live by, first, do no harm. Section 5. AI as a cognitive coach. Fortunately, Dr. Horvath's expertise shows us a clear way out of this trap. Again, technology isn't the enemy here. Its dominant, totally unguided role is the real problem. We can actually correct this in medical education by completely flipping how we use AI, shifting it from a tool that just hands out easy answers to a tool that demands deep thinking. We absolutely must transition to a hybrid intelligence model. Let AI efficiently handle the massive data processing, the pattern recognition, and running those clinical simulations. Humans, we need to focus entirely on empathy, compassion, and complex ethical reasoning. AI is great at aggregating data, for sure, but when a terrified parent looks up and asks, "Is my child going to be okay?" no algorithm is ever going to reliably interpret that fear or respond with genuine human compassion. Stanford's AI clinical coach, also known as AI Click, is a perfect, real-world example of doing this exactly right. Here's how it works. A trainee presents a patient case verbally, and the AI evaluates their logic right there in real time. It doesn't just spit out a diagnosis for the student to lazily copy. Nope. Instead, it generates a report for the attending physician to use for actual coaching. This approach uses AI in a very narrow, well-defined domain to guide and evaluate, rather than just spoon-feeding a frictionless answer. And this, right here, is the absolute vital distinction. We can use AI as a crutch, providing immediate, frictionless answers that totally bypass the brain's learning centers. Or we can use it as a coach, by acting as a system that asks challenging questions like, hey, what's the most dangerous diagnosis you need to rule out here? AI actually introduces that necessary cognitive friction we talked about earlier. It forces the student to connect the dots themselves, which strengthens their memory and builds real clinical intuition. Section 6. Reclaiming human-centric learning. Ultimately, whether we're talking about a middle school math class or a high-stakes surgical residency, we have to remember one crucial thing. While machines are undeniably incredible at processing data, human learning fundamentally thrives on social and emotional connection. Empathy just cannot be automated. Deep understanding requires an emotional connection that screens inherently disrupt. By bringing our focus back to the human center of education, we build the actual capacity for learners to evaluate information independently. And those are the kinds of skills that will easily outlast any single piece of software or app update. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought to ponder. As AI rapidly becomes a totally permanent fixture in our clinics and classrooms, are we going to surrender our cognitive abilities and just let the machines do all the thinking for us? Or will we harness these incredibly powerful tools to introduce productive friction, challenging ourselves to think more deeply, more critically, and way more humanely? At the end of the day, the choice of how we design the future of learning is entirely ours.